growing up, I would dress up all the time in ridiculous costumes. I bought a sword, like an actual metal sword. So basically, I wanted to be 800 years older when I was growing up. I wanted to be a pirate. I wanted to be a medieval knight, but nothing really tangible. No rational kind of dream.
I guess there's some part of me that would love to be Amelia Earhart and fly around the globe. Although I hate flying, but I mean the idea of sort of like taking off and traveling and going somewhere where, exotic lands like Tahiti and where else did she go? Bora Bora. I don't know. Just really, really amazing places.
I didn't run away, but I fantasized about running away. I had a really, really ideal childhood, but nevertheless, I would threaten to run away to my parents, so it was a power play. I also really wanted to be somebody else, so running away was connected to changing my identity. So for a while, I tried to convince my parents to call me Steve, even though my name's Dan, and that made almost no sense. I don't know where Steve came from.
I think the one time that I actually tried to run away, and there were a few times, but one I remember, I made it about a block and a half from my house. I was about 8 at the time, and then all of a sudden this squirrel just comes in my path, and I don't know, till any small little animal kind of freaks me out. Birds are even worse. But I remember when I was about that age, my uncle told me about rabies. And I didn't understand that not all animals have rabies. So this little squirrel who was looking for nuts comes up.
I mean, as I think about it, it's funny to think back on your memories of things like that, because I don't know, and this was a long time ago, I don't know if I was mad at my parents or mad about something, or if it was simply just a kind of playtime fantasy that you would run away, or run somewhere. You've heard before about like running away and joining the circus. And I guess I have sort of like a memory that was part of my thinking when I was a little kid.
I think it must have been from a cartoon where I saw a kid running away like a hobo with a stick and a handkerchief, a red handkerchief with all of his possessions in it, and I totally made that. I made a stick with a handkerchief and my few possessions in it, and I walked the railroad tracks near my house for several hours, thinking that I was going to go all the way down the railroad tracks forever. I think also the railroad tracks were important because I thought that eventually I'd hitch a ride on a passing train.
Well, it's kind of funny because as I was rebelling for my mother or whatever, I packed a lunch that would have made her very proud. I remember I packed carrots. And, I probably could have just thrown that at, all the vicious animals that came to attack me with the rabies. But I had a very well-balanced meal. I had some apple juice and carrots and some sort of sandwich, and I always remember that, peanut butter and jelly was good for you. I didn't understand why at the time. But, yeah, it was a really well-balanced lunch.
It was a kind of fantasy about it being adventure, and so I have a very distinct memory of making peanut butter sandwiches, and I made several of them. And I remember, putting the peanut butter on the bread and the jelly and, folding them up and putting them in a little brown sack and getting, like planning this little runaway trip. How many sandwiches would I need for how long I was going to be gone, that kind of thing.
The hobo bag I remember making because it was really complicated, and I've got short, stubby fingers, and I was a tiny kid, so tying the knot was probably a half-hour process. It was terribly planned. I might have had a peanut butter sandwich, but that's about it. But the sandwich was like food, and so it was like a bad Wonder Bread sandwich. I couldn't have been older than 6 or 7. And finding the right stick, because it had to look exactly like whatever cartoon I'd seen where this is how one runs away.
It was in the summer, and for some reason, I wanted to wear a winter coat. My mom wouldn't let me wear a winter coat. So I guess you have to go back and recreate the mental image. But so I'm 8 years old wearing a winter coat in Southeast Michigan, running down the street, and I I hightailed it back to my house. I did not want to get rabies. I was not ready for the real world. 8 was a little bit too early for me to leave home.
I think where a lot of that started was The Wizard of Oz, of Dorothy Gale and getting her little suitcase and, like this idea that she was going to run somewhere with her dog to protect her dog from Mrs. Gulch. And there's that sense of her kind of running away, but then realizing actually that there's no place like home, which maybe is what I realized because I didn't get very far with my little peanut butter sandwiches.
Home was pretty good.
Where were you hoping to go?
I had no clue. Away. Someplace where I could be Steve. I have no idea why.